so many people work so hard. The question is whether that work is motivated by love or fear. And
Absolutely.
if you're in this I'm not enough, then no amount of that work is gonna do it. But if you rest in peace and you know that your worth is just fine, whether you do another thing or not, as the spiritual doctor says, eventually you'll soon get inspired to go out in the world with some newfound desires, desires that spring from your heart and your soul. And wherever they take you, you're going there whole.
Yes.
Because the ego is now in the passenger seat. It lets down the window and takes in the treats. You're not in a hurry. You're going there slow. Because the journey's as rich as the places you'll go. Where you are going, you don't need to know.
Mhm.
Because the journey's as rich as the places you'll go.
Peace and riches blessings. I am Michael B. Beckwith, the host of Take Back Your Mind. Peace and blessings, everyone, and welcome to the podcast entitled Take Back Your Mind. I am your host, Michael B. Beckwith, the founder of the Agape International Spiritual Center. And every week I get to have a conversation with individuals who, in some way, shape, form, or another, have opened up their heart and are taking back their mind from the systematic hijacking that takes place in our society. From social media to newsreels to the social milieu, people's minds and attentions are hijacked. But we want to take back our own mind and not allow it to be programmed by external forces and other people's agendas. But we want it to be imbued with the source of all creation, the divine intelligence, the infinite wisdom, the unconditional love, and the perfect peace that can shine through us in ways beyond our wildest imagining. So today, I have Scott Grace with me. Brother Scott, welcome to Take Back Your Mind.
I feel welcome and I'm excited to be here, Michael.
Beautiful. Before we get started, let me just introduce you. Let me let people know who you are. For those who don't, you see mindful masculinity in his background. I love that. Scott Grace has made, he says, every mistake in the book when it comes to being a man. After all, he says his first role model was Tarzan. Not a good role model. But in his funny and insightful manual that helps men transcend the roles, ego, habits, and relationship boxes that they find themselves stuck in, Scott brings solid wisdom that gently nudges men to become more conscious, to be a more conscious conception of what it is to be a successful, purpose-driven, loving, and happy. In Mindful Masculinity, a book for men and the women who love them, Scott strips away the misconceptions, embedded beliefs, and behaviors that no longer serve men. Using humor to show where he went wrong, Scott brings to light new ways of being that attract people rather than dominate or drive them away, and embellishes one's authenticity. Scott is a highly sought after singer. He was singing when I came on with him this morning. Speaker, workshop leader, conscious stand-up comedian, I can feel that funny bone, who rose to prominence opening for personal growth luminaries like Deepak Chopra, Louise Hay, Ram Dass, Jack Canfield, Victor Hansen, Marianne Williamson, many others. Today, he's a life coach who assists men in taking charge of their growth so that they can make positive impact on the world with their masculinity. And we're not talking toxic masculinity. We're talking about that balanced, real stuff. So listen, Scott, from what I understand, you've had maybe 9 lives and growing
Indeed.
into a much more mindful, masculine man. Tell us about some of those. And, outlaw of the city of New York. I mean, you have some interesting background. Tell us a little bit
Yes.
about that and how you came to be who you are today, writing this wonderful book.
What comes first is to just say a little bit about the outlaw. I did used to sell laundry bags on the streets of New York City without a license, and I would get chased by the police. Sometimes they would take my bags, write me tickets. One weekend I spent in jail.
For
And
selling laundry bags?
yes, yes.
Were they filled with anything?
No, they weren't.
Just empty laundry bags.
Yes. Nylon jumbo laundry bags, machine washable, water resistant. The strongest laundry bag you can buy without a prescription. So from age 18 to 25, I was out there on the streets developing my sense of self. My secret dream was to be a professional musician. And so I would take the money that I earned from the laundry bags and go do voice lessons. I made my first cassette. I made about 4 cassettes while I was building enough courage to take the leap and move from New York to California and just do, I committed. Maybe the commitment was there and I just discovered it. But I just made a commitment that I would never do anything for money that wasn't meaningful, fun, and helpful for other people. Of course, selling laundry bags was helping people out, but
Right. People would have laundry.
they do exactly. And then I started to notice that I had the ability to improv songs, and I took classes in improvisation. But what I was noticing was that my improv was coming out of like from a higher place. It wasn't just entertainment. I was
Mhm.
able to tune in to people and circumstances, and that's why people like Deepak and Marianne Williamson started to hire me to sing at their events because they knew that they could turn to me at any time and say, "Sing about that, Scott."
Mhm.
So that's what I became known for, and that's how my musical career started.
That's you an opening act for these people.
Opening.
Traveling troubadour is what they called you.
They did. They said that, didn't they? And then in the corporate world, I was called the boardroom bard.
Uh-huh.
And I did the same thing in the corporate world that I did for the personal growth world. Just people would turn to me and say, "Sing about that." I
That's
hope you
powerful.
do that. I hope we can give you a taste of that today.
We're going to do it.
Good.
And then you have another title, the Doctor Spiritual
The
Seuss.
spiritual Dr. Seuss.
That's right.
So when my daughter was 2 years old, I finished reading her a Dr. Seuss bedtime story,
Hmm.
and I couldn't get the rhymes out of my head. And again, I noticed that they had a personal growth spiritual theme. So I went to my computer, and a couple of months later, I finished the first of 6 transmissions as the spiritual Dr. Seuss.
Hmm. And so you were rhyming, but you were rhyming with a pattern of inspiration, encouragement, spiritual growth and unfoldment. That's why they call you the spiritual Dr. Seuss.
Indeed.
Beautiful. Okay, we might have to come back to that.
Please
But
do.
let's jump into mindful masculinity.
Sure enough.
Tell us about that and how you came to write it.
Well, I came to in the 1980s, I was 20 years old and I was dating, not the whole decade, but I was I was dating a woman who was 29 who had a lot of spiritual understandings that I was fascinated with. And she introduced me to one of her main teachers. Her name was Shirley Luthman. And
Hmm.
as I read the books, there was this idea that masculine and feminine were within each person.
Yeah.
And I had never heard of that before. Masculine energy, the active, the assertive, acting with courage on the ideas that the feminine would plant. And in a sense, you and I may call it God, divine, Holy Spirit, whatever, but she would call it the feminine.
Hmm.
That the masculine needs to learn how to respect the feminine, let the feminine lead, and take action on behalf of what you receive, to not just like, oh, these are great ideas, but to have the courage to write a book, start a church, follow your guidance. So that was my first exposure to this whole idea that masculine and feminine were inside me.
Very
And
good.
yeah, years went by, and then the book knocked on my door.
And so you call it mindful masculinity.
Yes.
And so
My
what does that actually mean?
Well, first of all, it's a great buzzword. It gets a lot of hits these days.
It does.
It does mean awareness. I like to say it's being conscious without necessarily having to interpret, analyze, judge, just being aware, being the observer, witnessing yourself and what's going on without throwing in those opinions and interpretations and good and bad. It's the return to the garden, the innocence, the Rumi's field,
Yes.
beyond all ideas of right and wrongdoing.
Right. It's a non-judgmental awareness. So that's the mindful masculinity. One of your themes is the inner critic, being
Ooh,
aware of the inner critic so that it's not derailing you in some way, shape, form, or another. What does that have to do with our mindful masculinity?
yeah. So once upon a time, we all loved ourselves without having to prove it or perform or accomplish. And then there creeped in this idea, well, but can I say it as a spiritual Dr. Seuss? My favorite way
Yes.
of
Please.
yes, yes. So the ego will travel with you on this earth and be your companion for worser or worse. It pretends it's your friend, your bestest amigo, and it pours on the guilt. That's the beverage of ego. It's there to protect you, to help you be strong. So it has to remind you you've done it all wrong. You're weak and you're lazy and you don't have a clue. That's your drill sergeant ego trying to motivate you. The ego wants you to be all you can be, so it gives you these pep talks all day and for free. Oh, the places you'll go and the guilt trips you'll travel as the ego plays judge and bangs down on its gavel. But you always can get some relief from your pain by projecting it onto the others you'll blame.
Mm.
For that's the ego at its beastiest best. It nurses its grievances close to its chest. Republicans, liberals, your parents, your ex. The world is just teeming with folks to correct. If only these fools could get on, could conform to your ways, you can get on with life without further delays. So in that poem, the ego is another way of saying the inner critic.
Right. Yeah. And obviously, the ego is projecting all the unhealed areas out into the world, projecting it on other people, blaming other people, and keeping us boxed into our present paradigm and not allowing to escape its clutches to go into the field of the unknown, so to speak, and become a greater version of ourself. So that's the inner critic, the ego, which keeps you into
Yes.
shame, blame, and guilt, which are not spiritual practices, by the way. Those are
No,
the ways
they're not?
they
Oh,
keep
I've
us
been
small.
practicing them for so long, Michael.
I know
I
how.
light a candle. I do everything right, incense, and then I start beating myself up. Why isn't it working?
Well, as you've just described, that ego is having you go on a guilt trip, packing a
Yes.
lot of baggage,
Yes, a lot of
of
bags on that
a lot
trip.
of baggage of I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
And
and it's
so
out in the airways, isn't it? Like it's like a radio station we're taught to tune into, innocently enough, but then it as adults, it becomes our responsibility to change the station.
absolutely. And so now you segue into encouraging self-talk.
Yes, I love the word encouragement. I love just let's like encourage, to encourage yourself or others. It's the opposite of you're a bad boy, you're not doing it
Mhm,
right. When are you going to get your act together? It's
mhm.
this there's a fundamental goodness. You can call it whatever you call it. You love calling it everything on Sunday mornings. Divine child of God.
Yes,
And it's there. It's the fun. It's fun to let's be fundamentalists together. It's the fundamental nature of who we are. We don't have to go proving our masculinity or our worth. And once you start playing that game, you can't stop. And there's no amount of success, love, fame, fortune that is going to be enough because you're on the train of not enough.
right. Plus, you'll never can be satisfied with that which doesn't. You can never get enough of that which doesn't satisfy. So all the things that the ego goes for, all the fool's gold of the world, you can get all the fool's gold, but it's still not going to satisfy. And you can't get enough of it. And so
Absolutely.
people are out here just participating in empty calories, getting
Yes.
no spiritual nutrition at all,
It's
and
junk
just want
food
more
for
and
the
more.
mind.
Yeah, you combine that with people being dumbed down, it becomes a very interesting situation.
Indeed.
Very interesting. Mindful
As
masculinity.
the spiritual Dr. Seuss would say, perhaps you are on the fast track to success, constantly driven to be great, better, best. You're a mover, a shaker, a big time achiever. You're a real self made man, a dazzling diva. You're rich and you're famous and you make quite a splash. You're on top of the world and you're rolling in cash. You drive the right car. You've married the right spouse. Today, lunch with Oprah. Tomorrow, the White House. But at night, insecurity pays you a call because you know any time that you could lose it all. Your shrink says to rest. Your spouse sure agrees. Your doctor says ulcers, take 14 of these. You know you should slow it down sooner or later, but your foot is just glued to the accelerator. Your ego consoles. Well, at least you're successful. It's a sign of success to be constantly stressful. You made it to prime time and everyone loves you. But your self esteem's based on what others think of you.
That's right.
And opinions can change in the blink of an eye, which is why you need meds just to sleep and get by.
This is some good poetry, man.
Mm,
But your prose and poetry and Dr. Seuss isms basically are carrying all the kernels of truth
mhm.
that everyone needs to hear, men and women, but a lot of times men need to hear a little bit more because of how we've been programmed to do, get, win at all cost.
Absolutely.
And so this is mindful masculinity allows us to, as I read you correctly, allows us to become aware of those particular patterns that are emerging. And then as we're mindful about it, they seek to, they lose control over us because of our awareness of it. And then we're able to make much higher choices. So, so based on your Dr. Seussism you just did at this moment, you don't have a really high regard for the traditional work ethic.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. You work so hard and so many people work so hard. The question is whether that work is motivated by love or fear. And
Absolutely.
if you're in this I'm not enough, then no amount of that work is gonna do it. But if you rest in peace and you know that your worth is just fine, whether you do another thing or not, as the spiritual doctor says, eventually you'll soon get inspired to go out in the world with some newfound desires, desires that spring from your heart and your soul. And wherever they take you, you're going there whole.
Yes.
Because the ego is now in the passenger seat. It lets down the window and takes in the treats. You're not in a hurry. You're going there slow. Because the journey's as rich as the places you'll go. Where you are going, you don't need to know.
Mhm.
Because the journey's as rich as the places you'll go.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think like music, poetry takes you right into the vibration of the answer, transcends the ego, transcends the linear mind.
Mhm.
So everything that you just said there is a wonderful discourse on egocentricity, but also the ability to transcend it and to become aware of when it's operating.
Mhm.
Now you don't use the word, I don't think you use the word toxic masculinity
I don't mention
that
it in the
much.
book at all.
Yeah.
I do mention it on podcasts because it's a buzzword. And,
Okay.
I think that my version of what masculinity could be is non toxic, organic, gluten free, and perhaps raw. Maybe it's full of enzymes. I don't know. Haven't had it tested.
Enzymes are necessary.
Yes.
Now, in your own personal life, you talk about failure being one of your greatest teachers.
Yeah.
A lot of individuals who have been extremely successful in whatever field they're in will always speak of the failures and how to look at them differently. How do you respond to that?
I don't even use the word failure or success anymore in my vocabulary. Everything's for learning. Everything is valuable. It's like I'm done with those words. But I do mention it in the book because we think that way as a culture until we stop. So I would say failure is when I don't meet my goals, hopes, dreams, and expectations.
Mhm.
And I've had some wonderful experiences of humility, surrender, letting go, giving it to God, letting go of my agenda because my ego's plan has failed. I am
Mhm.
not going to find love, worth, or good feelings about myself by accomplishing this. Sometimes I think it's a lot harder to get to God if everything in your life is going your way. So for me, being down on my knees has been a great place to learn how to pray.
Right.
It also gave birth to this book, Mindful Masculinity. Allow me to tell you this story.
Please.
So during COVID, I needed some extra money and I got a job doing data entry and answering the phone 20 hours a week for a company called Man Cave America. And I really didn't like this job. I mean, I don't like computers. I don't it was like really demeaning to me, meaning that the meaning I was giving it was that I was less valid because I couldn't make a living anymore doing healing work and songs and everything. So I felt like this was like a shaming type
Mm.
of choice
Mm.
that I had to make.
Mhm.
And but I got into it. Actually got into it. I'm like, wow, I'm working for a living for the first time in my adult life. I actually have a job, a paycheck. Like, this is cool. I'm an ordinary person. And the boss, Henry, was very interested in all things personal growth and masculinity. So we got into these conversations. And then he picked up one of my earlier books. I didn't ask him to read a book. He just started reading. He found me, he found the book. And And he said, wow, you're a really good writer. I'd love for you to write some essays on things about men. And he gave me like 5 different ideas. And I wrote very free flowing. It never occurred to me to write about men and masculinity. And I started to come up with my own chapters and my own ideas. And then I presented to him, Henry, I think we have a book here. Would you like to publish it? Because I'm broke.
Mhm.
Oh gosh. And he warmed up to it. And my job now, 20 hours a week working for Man Cave America, is to promote the book and to speak about all things that have to do with healing and masculine and feminine energy.
Mhm. And you're still there now?
Yeah.
So that was more like a grace note from God
Yes.
that would look like a downward turn was actually a U-turn into something greater than you could imagine at that particular moment. The birth of your book, friendship, greater prosperity, greater platform for you to go forth and to speak about a mindful masculinity. So it wasn't what the ego may have thought was failing. I don't want to do this. Shameful. This is not what I want to do. I want to sing, you know. But it actually became a platform for a greater expression of your divinity. So yeah, it's not a failure, and that happens in a lot of people's lives if they could be patient enough that there's no denial or denial in the universal presence. Sometimes there's a getting us ready. Sometimes there's a transformation that must take place, a renewal of perception. But when we're in alignment with our heart's desire, ways are made of, and in your case, of what appeared to be no way. It seemed to be a dead end. Actually, it was a beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's that's a great
I don't know
analysis.
why I'm jumping a little bit, but the thought that's coming into my brain is
Mhm.
when you perceive there's a lack, whether it be a lack of money, a lack of love, lack of time, equally true is there is an abundance of something, something that you can actually be grateful for and trust. So let's say, oh, I have no money in the bank. Well, what do I have? I have a lot of free time and creativity to explore how I'm going to manifest money.
Right.
I have a simple lifestyle because I really can't, buy stuff. So I'm learning to, well, anyway, you get it. It's like there's
All right.
abundance
Right.
is the law of the universe.
Plus, you're not getting a lot of stuff that's going to be in a landfill in 6 months anyway. Yeah, and what's true is that we do live in a sea of abundance, and when I'm not talking about materialism, gross materialism, but as you were just indicating, there's when you, as you were just talking about, you put your attention on something that that is abundant, something to be grateful for. You're evoking another law. The law in Scripture says, "To he or she who has, more is given. To they who have not, even that which they have shall be taken away." So if you're in the feeling tone of having, even if it's more time, if friendship, whatever it is, that vibration itself brings more opportunities for the universe to show up through you. So
And you get to see them.
right, it becomes visible.
Yeah.
The invisible becomes visible as opportunities, as you've just described in your own life. That was an opportunity that came to you in work clothes. And in the beginning, it was like, no, 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 no. And then it was like, oh, this is a tuxedo.
Indeed. Indeed. And that law of manifestation of attraction, the Dr. Seuss part of me would like to pipe in here and just say,
Please.
ask and it's given. It says in the Bible. But if you're like me, then you're really quite liable to ask in a way that is more like complaining.
Mm-hmm.
Not like, let there be sun, more like, make it stop raining. And when you are focused on what you don't want, the universe has no choice but to respond by delivering more of what you're focused on. It can drive you to web surf at hopeless.com.
Mm-hmm.
Then along comes a reverend, a teacher, a song that helps you to get you've been asking all wrong.
Mm-hmm. That's good stuff.
Yeah.
I love it. You're bringing the law into wonderful prose. Yes. So one of the other things that you share is one of the deepest wounds that a man has is, I'm not enough. I'm not enough, which is a kind of a fake hole that men have within themselves. Speak on that for a moment, because this is one of the things that you highlight in your book.
Yeah. It's really dear to my heart because this has been my baggage, my oh God, crucifix that I've been carrying
Mm-hmm.
up a hill, a penance, and I've been married, literally loyal and devoted to this belief, collecting evidence from my life, from everywhere,
Yes.
that I'm not doing it right. There's something wrong with me. The mantra, I'm not enough, has never been as it has felt like the truth. It's like I've had to gradually fire my sense of inadequacy as my minister, because it has hit the pulpit and it has had a commanding tone and an authoritative tone. It's trying to play God. And it's very clear it knows that there's something wrong with me, and it thinks that if it can affirm that and get me to really sink into that and accept the truth that there's something wrong, bad, and stupid about me, lazy, that somehow what? My life is going to get better? It's freaking crazy.
Yeah, it's actually going backwards, because all of those complaints and all of the things that you've just described is actually a misuse of the universal law. As Dr. Seuss through you just said, it's going to bring to you what you're most attentive to, what you're most interested in.
Yeah.
And so if you're constantly complaining, you're making a public cry of your inability to see opportunities.
Yes.
You're saying, I'm blind to the opportunities and the possibilities, but
Yeah.
I can see what I don't want. And the universe says, we see you seeing it. Here's more of it.
Yes,
Yeah.
boss. Here's what you're asking for. what most interests me is how, all right, let's say you admit that. Let's say you can own that that's been your mantra. How do you turn that around?
Yes, that's the test. That's the work right there.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. And the answer I think is a little different for each person, but some people who are more mind oriented will just flood their conscious and subconscious mind with Sunday mornings at Agape and affirmations, and just let's replace that mantra with a new mantra and flush it out like a colonic. And then there's the behavior. I am willing to act as if I knew I was enough, even though there's a strong voice in there that is telling me I'm not. I'm going to start behaving. I'm going to actually change my body posture. I see that when I'm
Yes.
feeling inadequate, I kind of slump my shoulders and maybe I dress a certain way. Well, how would I dress and how would my posture be if I knew that I was magnificent?
Hmm.
And you can make that your practice and it'll
Hmm.
flush out the negative beliefs.
Hmm.
So there's
Yeah,
the
yeah.
behavior, there's the mind, the affirmations, and I I I think if I had a podcast, it might be called "Take Back Your Heart" or whatever,
Hmm.
because my work has been around cleansing, clearing, and opening the heart, even more than the mind. And many people can think positive thoughts and then get to their heart through the mental work. I've had a different path. I get to the feelings, I cleanse the feelings, I honor what I'm feeling with empathy and compassion, and then I start thinking better.
Right. You're talking about the journey from the head to the heart, and as in Sanskrit, like mind and heart have the same meaning. It's a wonderful balance of
Mm.
your heart mind. It's not separate as it is in the Western world. So when we talk about take back our mind, we're talking about coming into our connection with our heart and not allowing the mind to be programmed, but allowing our heart to be the guidance. So you're very interested in that journey
Yeah.
from the mental to the heart space within,
For
which is
example,
again mindful masculinity.
it is. It is.
Yeah.
There are a number of tools in the book around how to deal with the inner critic, and
Hmm.
affirmations and all that stuff is, I would say, the masculine path to healing. It's using action, using the mind to change the mind.
Hmm.
And then there are feminine tools, yin tools. And one of
Hmm.
them is to turn to the inner critic as if you were interviewing it, as if you were interested and caring, as if you assumed that all parts of you want the best for you and are
Hmm.
doing their best on your behalf, that
Hmm.
every part of you is here to help you. So you turn to the inner critic. And I say, hey, I noticed that you're telling me I'm lazy. Are you feeling scared that we're not going to get to where we want to go? Is that what's going on? Are you feeling nervous that if we continue down this path, nothing's going to happen? And so I start to give empathy and understanding to the inner critic, and then maybe some reassurance. Hey, what else do you need to tell me? What else do you want to tell me? Because if every part of you, if it's listened to with respect and reverence, it calms down. I see myself like the chairman of the board of all these different parts of me, and like it's a board meeting, and every
Hmm.
part of me wants to say something and be heard. It doesn't need to take over and dominate me when it's heard and respected.
Right. Because there's a seed of truth in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you want to hear it without pushing it away,
Hmm.
even though it may appear to be nagging. There's something underneath there. There's an aspiration, a spiritual aspiration, trying to break through,
Yeah.
and you're coaxing it out by deeply listening.
You betcha. It's like
Yeah.
a parent that loves their child to pieces, doesn't know how to express it directly, and is full of worry and fear. And and uses criticism to try to express their caring, because that's the
Right.
only language they know. And if you
Right.
can get them to go into their hearts, they would say, I want the best for you. I love you to pieces and I'm scared.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. You talk about the fact that in terms of honesty, women and men approach that differently. There's a different frequency. What do you mean?
Generally speaking, because there are many men with a lot of feminine energy that wouldn't resonate with this, but
Mm-hmm.
men feel more masculine in terms
Mm-hmm.
of intimacy and honesty when they report about what's going on in the present moment.
Mm-hmm.
And women are, again, this is an overgeneralization, but
Right.
they
Right.
like to get to the truth by going in circles and getting a little closer, maybe telling a story about their day.
Mm-hmm.
And the story has a lot of details in it. And where they eventually get to is, honey, I'm tired. Can you rub my back? Or something that's a present moment feeling and a present moment request.
Mm-hmm.
Men, they do better with going directly to the feeling and the request.
Yeah.
This present moment,
Quickly. Yeah.
I feel
Boom.
this, and what I want is this. And men lose that masculine edge when they tell a lot of stories and run around in circles and are afraid of speaking direct truth, present moment, here and now.
Mm-hmm. And so in coaching, as a life coach, in coaching people, how do you coach that? If you're
Mm.
talking to a man, what do you say? If you're talking to a woman, what do you say?
Hmm. Hmm. Well, first of all, you said something about me coaching men. I coach men, women, and those that defy all the categories we can come up with.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so how would I approach that? Well, first of all, women can benefit very often from going directly to the truth as well. It's not just a masculine, feminine thing. I create safety.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a connoisseur of safety, of empathy, of letting people be exactly where they are,
Mm-hmm.
and sensing when there's enough safety and enough trust whether or not they are open to a little nudge in a certain direction. Yes, you are perfect and lovable the way you are. However, you have a goal of getting closer to your mate, and I see that what you're doing right now isn't helping. So let me coach you a little bit on what could work.
Mm-hmm. Very good. You also talk about the righteous man, that the individual that wants to be right. They kind of operate from that paradigm of being right, and which you describe in your book as pushes away the intimacy, the closeness, the connection. But that's an unmindful masculinity.
Yeah,
Masculinity. Yeah,
yeah,
I'm right, and that's the way it is, and that's my point of view, and you can't change my mind about it. It's my opinion. That's
yeah,
that's that's
yeah.
almost toxic.
And I value my opinion more than I value being close to you.
Hmm. I
And
like that
underneath,
statement.
yeah, underneath that is usually insecurity
Hmm.
and an emotion that very few people, especially men, will admit that they experience, and that is shame.
Mm.
So, what is it? If I'm not right, I'm wrong. And if I'm wrong, this is the Tarzan model. It's just
Right,
there's
right, right.
black and there's white. Being right, good. Being wrong, bad.
Hmm.
That sense of I'm not correct, I'm not speaking truth, is going to bring up for the average man shame. And
Hmm.
I refuse. I will do anything so that I don't feel shame. That is the blackest, darkest black hole in the universe. I
Hmm.
refuse to feel it, and I will do anything. I will argue to the death that I'm right. I will collect evidence that I'm right, even if it's not right, even if it's like a video camera. This is what's going on politically right now.
Right.
Facts aren't important anymore. But let's
No,
not go there.
you got that
Let's
right.
not go there. So for a man to say, I feel shame right now, and it's hard for me to to own that. That's takes a lot of courage. And it is a sign that there's less shame running the psyche. When you're able to bring it out in the open and admit it, you are like 60% done with the shame. Because
Yeah.
shame wants to stay in the closet, wants to keep secret, and it manifests as wars. Why do people start wars? Why do people think they need bigger towers or bigger penises or bigger bank accounts?
Mhm.
Because there's this shame running the show underneath the
The feeling
surface.
of inadequacy and not being good enough, going back to that again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's a thought, but it's also a frequency. And I
Yes.
don't even think shame is a feeling, because emotions are like in motion. They come, they pass through, boom, done. Shame is more like a state of consciousness of bad, of I'm separate from God, I'm separate from goodness. I
Yeah,
deserve
it's a
punishment.
yeah, it's a state that
Yeah.
influences perception, experience, body chemistry, everything. It can go into depression. It can lead us to certain illnesses. Yeah, if it's chronic. And,
Yeah. Yeah. And people say, well, what about healthy shame?
mhm.
And I say there is something about that. It might be that I'm mincing words, but I would say that when people refer to healthy shame, they actually are feeling a feeling of regret.
That's what I was gonna say, exactly. It's regret,
Yeah.
and then the willingness, to redo, willingness to grow, willing to make amends and grow. But shame, like guilt, is from the ego. It just keeps you mired in the, uh, identity of "I'm broken and I'm wrong." Yeah.
I don't have this memorized, but the spiritual Dr. Seuss does have something to say about this, Michael.
Mhm.
There's a teacher inside you who teaches you lessons. His favorite word should is a sign of his presence.
That's right. I love
He
it.
shoulds on you till you're so deep in depression. You do things that make your priest gasp at confession. The teacher is guilt, and he's doing his best to whip you in shape so you'll be a success. When he thinks you screwed up, he will whip your behind the way jockeys whip horses to quicken their time. He's the guilt that stole Christmas, your personal Grinch, and he'll take a whole mile if you give him an inch. He lives in your basement. That's where he resides. Alone in the darkness, he schemes and he hides. So let's grab a light and head down to the cellar to expose and illumine this cagey cave dweller. Because most of us do not become motivated. When guilt's on our case, we just want it sedated. So we smoke and we drink to drown out the noise, or become busy worker bees, good girls and boys.
Mhm.
Straight A's, nothing less, in your quest for perfection, in the hopes our achievements can win God's affection. But God always gives you a standing ovation, adoring you with the most pure adoration.
Mhm, mhm.
It's guilt that imagines that God could be pissed, which makes you walk on eggshells, afraid of his fist, which possibly drives you to be atheist, or at least a type A perfectionist. There's a line I'm looking for. Um, yeah, here it is. Guilt thinks that it's serving a valuable service by rushing to judgment and making you nervous. But guilt's not like conscience, regret, or remorse. Those teachers teach gently, while guilt uses force.
Mhm.
What's wrong with you, madam? And of course, shame on you, sir. Guilt thinks he's your teacher, but he's just your abuser.
No, that's powerful. That's beautiful. Are these in the book?
Most of the Dr. Seuss material is in the new book, but there's stuff that isn't. The Law of Attraction poem and the Guilt poem just show up in this book called "Oh, the Places Your Ego Will Go."
Okay. Oh, that's beautiful.
Mm.
Very, very you're very talented. It's very beautiful.
Well, thank you.
Mhm.
I'm honored that to hear you say that because I know that you are in the presence of a stream of amazing people, including yourself.
Thank you so much.
I've been to your church, by the way. I used to live in San Diego, and we would carpool and go and just have the best time.
Yep.
It was like
And
it's
people
like
people
I wouldn't be surprised if pharmaceutical companies that sell antidepressants pay you millions of dollars to shut down your church. Not that you would accept it.
you're probably right. Because so many people, they have that as a testimony that they'll begin doing spiritual practice and then gently, you know, move away from the exogenous things they need to take to keep themselves what they think is sane or feeling good. They start to
Yes.
realize it's all generated from within and take back their power. It's very, very powerful. And people still carpool from San Diego. They carpool from all over the place. You know, it's still going on, Scott. Still going on.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Yeah. Listen, you're a cheerleader for men who have the inability, the unwillingness, or have not experienced crying in a long time.
Yes.
You assist them in opening up. You know, how do you know teach or encourage some of these men who are just born not born but been trained into a real man doesn't cry
Yeah.
frequency.
Well,
Yeah.
the teacher has to be the first and most important teacher is misery,
Mhm.
failure, having your life fall apart. When you're sufficiently guarded from your emotions, you need a very stern teacher. And
Mhm.
usually men who come to me have already experienced that teacher. They don't come
Mhm.
all rosy, and I'm not a success coach. I'm not like,
Mhm.
hey, you got goals and dreams, let's make them come true.
Mhm.
Usually people come to me on their knees and relationship challenges, that kind of thing. And I, first of all, I think there's a frequency that I transmit, having cried so much in my
Mm.
life,
Mm.
that there is just a nonverbal heart to heart transmission of energy that
Mhm.
says, hey, dude, it actually is not just safe for you to allow your tears, it's courageous.
Mm.
It's safe to fall apart. Only those who are willing to fall apart can find out how together they really are.
Mhm. Mhm.
Now, there
Beautiful.
are tools I use, tapping. Uh,
Mhm.
Basically, emotions are they need to be validated every step of the way. So I may start with some tapping, like even though I'm terrified of crying and I will never do it, I deeply love it. Even though I was called a sissy when I cried it, and then I love and honor and accept myself. We validate. I don't want to be a sissy. I'm a real man. We
Mhm.
validate that, and then I'm scared. If I cry, it's going to be forever. I'm scared I won't be able to turn it off. I
Mhm.
want to be out of control.
Mhm.
That kind of thing. So we take it one layer at a time, validating each layer of experience, and eventually the rainstorms start. The drought is over.
Outstanding. Mindful masculinity. Well, two things.
Yeah.
If you feel like that something hasn't been said, like we get off this conversation and you think, oh, I should have said X, Y, or
Yes.
Z. Think about that and then either give us a little more Dr. Seuss
Yeah.
or a song, whatever you're feeling in this moment.
Yeah. 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 So let's imagine that I'm walking away. Oh, I had a
Mhm.
nice talk with Reverend Dr. Michael just now. Oh, I wish I would have. No, nothing.
Okay. That's a good interview.
Yeah, you were pretty darn thorough. You read the crib notes.
I read everything. I read the Akashic records.
Oh my goodness. They're transferring them to digital now because no one has the records anymore. And so it's Akashic MP3s. What do we need to call it now?
Call it direct insight into the past, the present, and the future happening simultaneously, and you just pick what you want to see at any given moment, if you're conscious enough.
Yeah.
God GBT.
God GBT. Let's sing about that. Well, there's a God GPT, and there's an inner GPS. It's inside of you and me. Each one of us is equally blessed. Thank you, Michael, for this talk. You are one who truly walks the walk. Every sermon, every word points us to the wordless, the empty space that's filled with grace. You have a permanent parking place in a divine garage, which is orchestrated and owned by God. Today you lost your virginity, penetrating mindful masculinity. We had some fun and poetry and maybe learned a thing or two. Men don't have to do. We can simply be and be worthy and accept all God's gifts. They're free. Nothing to earn or prove. Nothing to gain and nothing to lose. No reason to keep singing the blues. Turn off the news. It's manipulation. Take a permanent, endless vacation from the trying to be informed by people who are making a profit off your fear. Time to let the air just clear from fear and guilt and bad news. Hear the great news. It's inside you. No matter who is president of the United States, what's presiding over us is heavenly grace.
Outstanding. From the moment eternity breaks into time. Beautiful, beautiful. Hey, everyone. You've been listening to Scott Grace and Michael Beckwith have a conversation. Scott, where can they get your book? How can they be in touch with you?
Amazon.com, Google Mindful Masculinity, Scott Grace. Website, scottsongs.com, SCOTTSONGS.com. Meet me on Facebook, Scott K. Grace. And YouTube, just look up my name on YouTube and I'll be there. Dr. Seuss, there's 6 videos on YouTube of me doing my thing. And it's like a transmission of energy when I'm doing it in front of a live audience and I'm feeding off of the audience and they're feeding off of me. And YouTube is such a blessing because you get to sink into that and be a part of it.
Outstanding. Well, thank you for this lively conversation and timely in terms of what's happening on the planet this particular time in human history and the rising of the feminine and the deconstruction of the toxic masculinity and the energy trying to hold on, but knowing that the universe is not only friendly, the universe is progressive, and that which is decadent will not survive forever, only that which is in cadence with the fundamental harmony of the universe. So your book of mindful masculinity is right on time, straight from the eternal, and you are appreciated. Thank you. Peace and blessings. I truly hope that you are enjoying Take Back Your Mind podcast. The Take Back Your Mind podcast is sponsored primarily by the Agape International Spiritual Center. In other words, everything that you see in terms of the staff that puts this together, the editing, the equipment, all of this is sponsored by our Agape International Spiritual Center. So if you are enjoying the podcast, I'm inviting you to support the sponsor. Support Agape. Simply go to agapelive.com and make a donation. And say in the donation that you are supporting the podcast. It allows us to keep broadcasting. It allows us to keep putting these magnificent moments together with these wonderful people that I get to interview. We keep having the possibility of updating the equipment that's necessary and providing the wonderful content that many of you are writing in and saying, I really love the podcast. Support the podcast. Support the sponsor. Agape International Spiritual Center. agapelive.com. You can also text to donate. You can text the word give to 424-321-6243 and put podcast so that we know that you're really supporting this wonderful podcast. Our secondary sponsor is Adaptozen, Adaptozen. This is my superfood greens. It's nutritionally dense because I teach spirit, mind, and body. We want our body temples to be healthy. So one of the products is my superfood greens. You can go to nutrarise.com. Those three little lines you see, you hit those three little lines and you'll see Adaptozen. There's two products, my superfood greens and a product called Elevate, which are organic mushrooms for your health. You can put both in your smoothies so that you have main ingredients for the health of your body temple. These are our sponsors. Primary sponsor, Agape International Spiritual Center. Secondary sponsor, Adaptozen. I want you to be healthy. I want you to be wise. Circulate and share. Peace and blessings. Peace and blessings. Welcome to our meditation portion of Take Back Your Mind. And be aware that meditation is integral to all that we do here at our spiritual center known as the Agape International Spiritual Center. Prior to every service, there's a meditation service. We even have a way of meditation service every Sunday at 6:45 a.m. because meditation is that important. I get to do a Dharma talk and then we practice. And so in the Take Back Your Mind podcast, of course, there would be a few moments of meditation. Meditation is transportation to transformation. What does that mean? The word trans, which has become popular, trans means to go beyond. So you're going beyond the present formation of your life, which is the condensation of previously held points of view, positionalities, perspectives, perceptions, opinions. That's the formation of your life. We're going beyond that so that that formation can begin to change and you become a better version of yourself. You see, what we see in the world is an artifact of previously held points of view. It was once thoughts and opinions, and then it becomes manifest as a world. It's an artifact. The world as we see it is a symmetry. It's not a symmetry, it's a simulation of the past, of something that's already happened in mind. In meditation, you're going beyond time and space, ultimately, that is, into having a deep and an abiding encounter and awareness with that which transcends time and space, which is your real nature and being. And then here's what happens. You get to bring the eternal into time. It's called love. It's called creativity. That's called generosity. It's always giving because it is the eternal aspect of yourself revealing itself in time. It is never getting anything because it is already everything. You are already all that which is real, but you have to uncover it through the art and the science of meditation, which is a very powerful spiritual technology. Let's begin. Close the outer eye. Feet on the ground. Hands on your lap facing upward as a sign of receptivity. That is the tea we're drinking right now. Receptivity, availability. And we have a dynamic intention to have a realization of our oneness with that which is eternal. You can call that God, the presence that's never an absence, pure intelligence, divine beauty, life itself. We want to have an encounter that is so real that we begin to be aware that we've never been cut off or separated from it. That is an illusion and a delusion, because it can never happen. So we turn in and tune in. Quietness, stillness, silence, sacred solitude. Be still and know that I am God in the midst of you. Noble silence. It's golden. Be still and know. Body temple, the mental body, the emotional body, the intangible bodies, subtle bodies, astral, etheric, are all in your field of awareness. The house you're in, the dwelling you're in is in your field of awareness. The sounds that are happening are not disturbances, they're in your field of awareness. You are pure awareness. Out of this silence, there emerges a deep sense of gratitude that we exist at all. Dynamic thanksgiving, pure appreciation for life, our life, an emanation of the only life that there is. We feel it. And give thanks that this day, this afternoon, this evening, whatever time zone we find ourselves in, is unfolding perfectly, rightly, and well. We declare it as we intend to wake up. And so it is. Amen. As you slowly open your eyes, be present in this moment. Be grateful, and allow me to thank you for this brief sitting, which is so important for our life. Have a beautiful day. Your time is very valuable, so I want to thank you for lending us your ear and participating in taking back your mind. If you want to submit a question for the question of the week, please submit it to podcast@michaelbeckwith.com. If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, please submit a review and let us know your thoughts. Stay on top of current episodes by subscribing to the podcast so that you'll receive alerts and not miss one single episode. And feel free to share this podcast with all of your friends and family. And until we meet again, take back your mind, and you will take back your life. Peace and blessings.